those.
Hello and welcome to Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, and welcome to the Game of Thrones Series 7 Episode 1 review, and the episode is called Dragonstone, I believe. We're going to be doing these episodes every Tuesday at around the 9 o'clock, 9:30ish mark, and we're going to try and get George on for them, but sadly he's unavailable today. So instead it is just myself, Tayson Yawa, and I am joined with Christopher Garner. How you doing, Chris? You good?
I'm doing very good. I'm ready to talk some Game of Thrones. We wait for this time every year. Sadly, next year there won't be any Game of Thrones, so it'll be a long time coming for Season 8.
It will.
We did reviews on all the episodes of Season 6. We love talking Game of Thrones, and although we don't talk about TV all that much, Game of Thrones is kind of that next level TV show where it comes very close to essentially almost being a movie, a 10-hour movie, or in this case, a 7-hour movie with this series. But yeah, we're ready to talk some Dragonstone. So if you want to lay down how we're kind of going to go through each of these episodes.
So the format that we've always gone with our Game of Thrones reviews is we start at the very, very north of the map, and then we work our way down to the very depths. So usually the end of the episode will always be on either Old Town or Dawn or any of the plots that are going down in the south. But we always start up north. There's usually a lot more happening up north, so it keeps things interesting. So are you ready, Chris?
I am. Make sure everyone as well watching, comment, offer your speculation, offer your ideas and your review on this episode as we go along.
I want to point out, this is completely spoiler-filled.
Oh, yes, of course.
This isn't going to be a, Game of Thrones, this episode was good. Why? What happened? Stuff happened. Of course it's going to be spoiler-filled.
Is there really a single human being at this stage that hasn't watched this episode already? I avoided Facebook for like half of the day because I didn't want to see spoilers.
My Facebook was kind, and I'm happy for that. But anyway, okay, so let's start north of the Wall. Not really much happens north of the Wall in this episode, other than the White Walkers. They're marching, and they got giants.
They're still fucking walking. I guess the giant tell in this series shows how much more budget they've got, because I swear to God, every other battle scene we've seen, there is always one giant present, and I know it's not the same giant, but it always looks like the same giant. Now we have at least three undead giants, not just regular giants, undead giants. So this is progress for this series right from one of the opening scenes.
I'm going to go ahead and say that the wait for the White Walkers to get to the wall and climb over the wall is about the same as Daenerys getting to Westeros.
Oh God, does that mean we're going to have like another 6 seasons before the dead actually arrive? Fuck.
Only 2 series left of Game of Thrones. Yep, the White Walkers are arriving in 6 series time. The spin-offs is the White Walker Chronicles, where they literally just, it's like watching paint dry. They're just walking across an icy landscape. More of like a screensaver, if anything, because they don't really talk as well.
Oh God, can you imagine? People would still watch it. I'd still probably fucking watch it.
Okay, so let's move to something which did actually happen. Bran and Mira make it to the wall. They have escaped the dead, which means the dead must be somewhat close behind, unless Benjen's putting up a glorious fight in keeping them at bay. He meets up with the Lord Commander Dolorous Ed. Dolorous is like, "Who you?" And Bran goes, "I'm Jon Snow's brother." And he goes, "Okay, prove it." And Bran says something really moody and long-winded, and he goes, "Yeah, fuck it, you're you're related to Jon Snow, of course you are." And they go inside. Because he doesn't actually prove anything with what he says.
Not really. He's just kind of really mystic, and
he's just like, "I've seen the Night King," and he's just like, "So has half of the free folk."
He's just very pretentious, and they just let him in because of that reason alone. I didn't mind this. Go on, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say my next comment was going to be he would have let them in if they're free folk as well, wouldn't he? Because they're okay behind the wall now, aren't they?
Yeah, that was kind of weird when he said, "Are you wildlings?"
Are you wildlings? Yes. Oh, well, then come on straight through.
I didn't hear any like horn blast or anything like that to signal their arrival or anything like that. I didn't mind this scene, although it does dwell on one of those really kind of tedious and frustrating story mechanics where you're like, no, you just missed the person you were going there to see because he's fucked off south now. Just turn your ass around here and drag him back. Go. I know that's all part of the story, and I know the frustration's part of storytelling, but sometimes as a viewer, you're kind of just like, because you're the omniscient person, you know everything that's going on as a viewer. It does get a little bit frustrating sometimes.
Anyway, that's really all that happens at the Wall. We get to see the Wall again, at least.
We're definitely going to see it crumble. We're going to talk more about speculation at the end. But this episode, if I'm going to sum it up overall, and I think George said this as well in terms of his notes, it's the classic setup episode. It's lots of small little scenes. It's getting everyone back into the swing of things with Game of Thrones, establishing where everyone is geographically, what they're going to be setting out to do. But I guarantee by the end of this series, and we're going to talk about this as we go through, there are going to be a lot of story threads that are set up very subtly, perhaps, in this first episode that are going to pay off towards the end of the season.
Okay, so let us move down to Winterfell, the main town of the north. At Winterfell, we've got Jon making some early on business decisions, very much in the same vein as Ned Stark. And Sansa even points that out by kind of sending off backhanded comments and kind of disagreeing with what he's saying. Basically, Jon wants to spare the lives and spare the houses of the people who rebelled against him. He wants them to fight alongside them because they are all needed for the war to come. Sansa is in the mindset of, we've got to execute the leaders, make a statement, and give the houses to people who have earned it, not traitors. And as far as like that message goes, it makes sense till you see how young the people are, and it shows how cold Sansa has really become. I completely understand her decision to say, okay, we need to reward the people who have been good. We need to show punishment to people who have been bad to us. They are our enemies. Like, we can't just kind of forgive them and try and move on with it. There will always be some form of kind of there will be something there which will tell from the previous battles that have been fought. And it's one of those kind of headstrong moments that Jon has where he goes, look, we need as many people as we can. We need them to be fighting on our side. And he even goes as far to say that all of the women and the children too need to fight. Anything above the age of 10 must have a sword in hand and training every single day. And that kind of shows what kind of leader Jon is, and it also shows what kind of leader Sansa would be. Sansa is ruling a lot like Cersei, to the point where she even admires her, as is stated in the episode. Whilst Jon is leading a lot like his father, Ned. Well, not his father anymore, but his father, Ned. And going with a very kind of honest, kind of making sure everyone gets along, working as a team to get to victory.
Yeah, and I like how this, don't get confused with House Frey. I like how this Frey is being set up between these two. This was being established in like the last couple of episodes of season 6. We could really see this decision on Sansa's part, this conflict of ideology between her and her brother Jon. And at the forefront of that, I'm going to talk about in a minute, is my favorite character in Game of Thrones. It's Littlefinger. Like, for as much as I hated that kind of story detour in Series 5 where he sent her to Ramsay, which really didn't seem like a smart decision on Littlefinger's part because it seemed like they just wrote themselves into a corner. They eventually got out of it. You can see that, you know, even though he doesn't say much to her in this, and even though she shoots him down, she's becoming a lot wiser like him. And she's even almost matching him now in terms of their sass-off almost. I used to call it the sass-off between Varys and Littlefinger. Now we're getting Sansa and Littlefinger. That's really cool. And you just have to look at how Sansa and Jon have sort of grown up differently. Completely different surroundings and different circumstances. Jon, although he's been at the Night's Watch, and although you could argue that maybe he did betray the Night's Watch and side in with the Waldens, eventually uniting them all as one force, it's always been about honor, nobility, and rules and set things that are expected of him. Sansa has been in the capital where corruption is rife, people backstabbing one another, outwitting one another, full of intrigue, essentially. And she's grew up around this. She's learnt a lot from it, as well as Littlefinger at the Vale. So we can see that dark, we called her like, Darth Sansa at the end of season 4. And I think more so than ever, even more than them, we're seeing that trait take place in her. And I did think it was a bit uncalled for how she does call him out on his decisions in front of everyone. She doesn't sort of whisk him away at the side. But you can't. This is what Game of Thrones does really well, because everyone has a moral grey area. There's good and bad to both sides. Where she says, you know, our father was honorable. Ned Stark was an honorable man, but he was a stupid man. Robb Stark was stupid. She doesn't want to see Jon go down that same path. And I think that's an incredibly great dynamic. And I'm sure it's going to just develop more and more, to the point eventually, I think, where Sansa is going to break away from Jon and side with Littlefinger. He's definitely got a plan. He always has a plan. He's 100 steps ahead of everyone. And every scene where Aidan Gillen is kind of leaning against a wall with like a sly smile on his face.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see how this storyline's going to develop.
Funnily enough, in the episode preview for next episode, you've got the thing which you see in the first trailer where Littlefinger is going to be held up against the wall by the throat. So maybe the change of hands will come sooner. But someone pointed out this on Reddit, that Sansa is a bit more like Cersei than you would like to think. They went on to say that Cersei, the way that she kind of deals with her enemies is that she adds conflict into the matter to make the person who is in charge seem like they are in more power. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Cersei would always side with the king to make it seem like that he had more power and he was all righteous, but sometimes she would disagree. She would do something against the order, and that would make the king seem like they're in more power than they actually are. Mm-hmm. And Sansa kind of, I don't know if she's playing it like this or not, but if she is, Sansa disagreeing directly with Jon, and Jon making a very headstrong decision and saying, this is my final decision, you must obey it, doesn't that make him seem a bit kind of more stronger, more leadery like, by kind of saying, this is my final decision, you must agree with it?
Yeah, but also you could see that not a tyrannical side, but we've seen this before with Robb with the Karstarks. That was more brutal, but that was still a guy set about by rules. And it'll be interesting to see if Jon does go down that route. I think by the end of this series, because Sansa technically, I guess it would fall to Bran technically if it goes by male lineage, but you know, Littlefinger believes in that claim, and I think that Sansa is believing in her own claim over Jon Snow. The fact that Littlefinger constantly keeps reminding her that Jon Snow is a bastard, he technically is an illegitimate child. We know his true heritage now, but in terms of their knowledge of it, he is still an illegitimate child and not a fit ruler for Winterfell. Sansa does say that she admires him as a leader, and she says, you're very good at this. However, I do think we're going to see her be deconstructed more and more as Littlefinger corrupts her. And I know it's only 7 episodes, so it might see a bit of a harsh turnaround, but will she eventually break away from Jon, side with Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale, and maybe they'll be their own faction? Because let us not forget that Littlefinger doesn't just want the North, he wants the throne.
He wants everything.
And whether he'll get it, I don't know. Game of Thrones is always unpredictable, especially now considering it's gone way past the books. So even I don't know at this point. But definitely some interesting stuff going there. And also at the Wall as well, we had some fun moments with Brienne training Pod. Pod's just a great character, and we saw him trying to come more into his own the last season. And, man, that relationship between Tormund Giantsbane and Brienne, I absolutely ship it. And if this doesn't happen by the end of Game of Thrones, I'm going to be devastated.
It is the relationship which should happen. It truly is. Yeah. I'd be shocked if they didn't go for it. Oh, she will, of course. He'll save her on the battlefield or something like that, and she'll fall down with Florence Nightingale syndrome, or that'll be the reverse, and maybe she'll finally see kind of what she sees in him. But yeah, moving on now. So we're going down into the Riverlands, and quite a lot happened in the Riverlands, in various different areas of the Riverlands in this episode. So we'll start off with the Hound and the Brotherhood Without Banners. They are traveling north. I don't think they actually said where they're traveling north to.
Did they give a reason as to why they're traveling north? I couldn't remember from the previous season.
Well, I actually don't know, but a lot of things being mentioned this season, I know we'll go there at some point, is Eastwatch by the Sea. Tormund mentions that he's going to take all the wildlings to man the wall at Eastwatch by the Sea. When the Hound looks into the flames towards the end of this episode, he sees where the wall meets the sea. So I'm assuming that is Eastwatch by the Sea. So I think there will be the ultimate team meetup that we saw in the trailer, the circle shot. which we're going to get an amazing battle with. I think that's going to happen there at Eastwatch by the Sea. So the Hound is basically traveling with the Brother of Banners. He comes across the farmhouse, which was last seen in Series 3 when he was traveling with Arya. And this was a family who the Hound stole food from. Arya said they're not going to survive, and he said they wouldn't have survived anyway. And they come to the house, and they see the bodies, and you can immediately tell that the Hound is shaken by it. And he is a changed man, probably because of his interactions with the priesthood that he was with.
Yeah.
It's a different Hound we're seeing this season.
Yeah, and it's although it's not. I always talk about the books, and I don't want to compare this series too much to the books. As said, it's completely moved past it, and it's essentially its own thing now. But although it's never been explicitly said in the books that the Hound is still alive or has come back, it's heavily the Gravedigger, and we see that in this episode, and also the fact that we're seeing what's quoted in the book as that the priest buried the Hound. It's the personality of the Hound. It's his previous past. He's trying to outrun it. He's trying to. It's always going to be there, and it's always going to haunt him. But he's trying to find a place in himself where he can move from it. And as Thoros of Myr says in this episode, there's more to your. I'm paraphrasing. There's more to your journey yet, Sandor Clegane. You are meant for greater things. We just don't know what those greater things are. I liked how they tied it back to the family at the farmhouse. I didn't know they were going to do that, but I think that although Sandor Clegane's not a very expressive character, in the way that he shies around things or tries to ignore things, that says almost 1,000 words compared to if he did actually react to it. And what's incredibly interesting is that he confronts his fear of fire, and I like how he played that. We saw that come into it with in Series 2 at Blackwater, where he fled the battlefield because of the fire. And
Series
it ties
3
back
with the
to
Brotherhood without Banners fighting the Flaming Sword.
Exactly, yeah. And this is where he finally confronts it. Maybe a little bit easy. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more apprehension, but I know that they've got to move the scene on. And at this point, Sandor Clegane is almost like a red priest. He's showing the signs of it, like he can read the flames.
Oops, sorry, I dipped out for a second. I don't know why.
You did dip out, and now there's still one of you. It's fine. But yeah, he's essentially become a red priest. He can read the flames, and he does have a premonition. He talks of an arrowhead-shaped mountain where the wall meets the sea, and then the fire crackles. Now, we're probably going to have different interpretation of what we think that fire crackling means. I think it could mean the destruction of the wall.
Wait a sec, Chris. We do have a slight technical problem. For some strange reason, can we eject that? Eject.
Yeah.
Oh, will it still work? That's the question. Because on the stream at the moment, I can see the main Cinema Savvy logo, nothing else.
I think you.
It's fixed. I fixed it. I'm a genius. So
okay,
we're all good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, your take on the whole reading the flame scene?
I think it was done quite well. I'm glad they didn't put in any kind of CGI or anything like that, so you could actually see what was seen in the flames, and it be more of a kind of what's going on in his mind kind of thing, seeing into the future, third eye, whatever you want to call it. I think it was played very well by Rory McCann. That's all I can really say. Yeah,
and was there anything else that was shown in the scene? I don't think it was. I think that was pretty much it. Again, it's all set up for what's to come for later on. Is he the Lord of Light? I think we've talked about this before. Some people think Jon Snow's the Lord of Light. Some people think Sandor Clegane's the Lord of Light.
Is Sandor Clegane the Lord of Light? Maybe. After this episode, especially, that's a very big claim that he can actually see stuff in the flames. Be very interesting to see him. If what's his face, Beric Dondarrion dies when these 7 meet the army of the dead, will he be the one to pick up the flaming sword?
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, if he's overcome his fear at this stage, if he does get a flaming sword, Melisandre's speech in season 2 of Game of Thrones, the Lord of Light and his sword shall be Lightbringer. George R. R. Martin is great with his writing in that he can give a name, he can give a premonition that can have a million different outcomes.
Not only that, but like we see Sandor Clegane later on in the first trailer. We see him in the south. We see him next to Lannister soldiers. So if they're going up north now, and I feel like it could probably be episode 4 or maybe 5 that they do the massive fight with the dead, he's going to survive that, and he's got to go south again. And it was definitely him in the trailer. Like it was his clothing. You could see part of his face. So he will survive this fight up north. So what does that mean for the rest of the series? What's he doing down in the south now that we know he's starting the series going up north?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it going to be Clegane Bowl? Who knows?
It'll happen. It's got to make you want it. We've wanted it for seasons at this point. It's got to make you want it, and when we get it, it will be fantastic.
Okay. Also in the Riverlands, slightly lower down in the Riverlands, we have Arya Stark starting Series 7. A huge kill count while wiping out an entire house before the title credits.
What did you think to this scene? I kind of wish that this had been her final scene of season 6. It felt like a concluding scene. I know this is to set up like the whole theme of the North remembers, and the Starks are probably going to be either all reunited, or most of them will by the end of this series, or be the prominent house going into season 8. I loved this scene, and it was nice that we got oh god, I forgot his name, Filch from Harry Potter, the one who plays Walder Frey. I can't believe I've forgotten his name. It was nice to see him back. So technically, he still does he does get a credit in season 7. It reminded me. You're a Watchmen fan. It reminded me of the Ozymandias scene where he gets all his workers to toast to him, gives a speech, and then they all die of poisoning. It reminded me of that a little bit.
I'm going to say it was needed in this series, because when I first saw the very start of the episode and he popped on screen, I thought, okay, so they're going with a few of the other series and doing a flashback to start off with. And then as soon as they mention the Red Wedding, I'm thinking, what have the Freys done since the Red Wedding? And then it kind of slowly dawned on me that that was Arya. And it wasn't at the very, very start I thought immediately, bam, that's Arya. She's going to kill everyone.
Oh, I did.
No,
because my episode got a previously on, and it showed him getting his throat slit again.
I know,
and I thought, well, that's happened. And as soon as he got them all to raise a glass as a toast, I was like, okay, it's going to be poison.
I thought at the same time, because in previous series they've done, what was it, Mag the Witch, premonitions. They have done flashback in previous series to previous events of kind of notoriety. So it could have been the Freys plotting the Red Wedding to start off with. That would have been interesting. Just saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go kill them all and stuff like that. When they come here for the wedding, it could have really been anything. But it was only halfway through that I realized, okay, we're in present day. We're not in the past. Yeah. So I think the scene played out quite well. However, that isn't the talking point of this episode. I can't believe we're having to do this.
Yeah.
But what could have been one of the better scenes in the episode may have been completely ruined by a needless cameo. And I say it is a needless cameo having Ed Sheeran in the show, because they've had musicians, they've had celebrities in the show in the past, but every single one of them has been a background character. They've been a drummer or a juggler or a non-character, no lines, literally flashed up on screen for a second. If you look very closely, you can point them out. But this was just a slap in the face. Hi, I'm Ed Sheeran. This is my new song. I'm going to play Wonderwall to you guys or some shit like that. And it was a good scene. It was a very good scene, talking about the Lannister soldiers who weren't actually that bad, who really have just been caught up in this war and have just being picked for a side, and they have to fight for it. They have kids. They have dreams when they go home. They didn't want to become soldiers. That's a brilliant story right there. You don't need Ed Sheeran in there. It completely draws you out of the fantasy of Game of Thrones. You go to Game of Thrones to escape from all this shit happening in life. You don't need Ed Sheeran's face popping up.
And I mean, the fallout of this is absolutely hilarious, because as of this recording right now, I mean, George told me this. Ed Sheeran has quit his Twitter. He's completely just dropped it. Because of the amount of backlash that Game of Thrones fans have had on his page. So fair play to Game of Thrones fans. They will come in thick and fast. They will be an army of the dead, unlike any other, and will take what is theirs with fire and blood. And they did exactly that. This was not only one of the worst scenes of this episode. Well, it was the worst scene of this episode. It was one of the worst scenes in Game of Thrones.
It could have been a good scene if it didn't have Ed Sheeran in it.
See, I think they've already done like this whole moral thing with like good soldiers on both sides. They've done it loads of times before. If you think back to season 2 with Robb Stark on the battlefield, where he saves that one Lannister guy, and you know it's the brutality of war. It's just another guy doing a job. They've done this loads before. There are many other times than that as well. I mean, I can't remember now, but I know that they've done it a lot more than that.
I think it helps that Aya was kind of... She's in the Riverlands, so she isn't like down in the south. She isn't close to King's Landing. She isn't close to the north. And also stated her intention that she wants to go to King's Landing. So she isn't heading north for the family reunion. At this present moment in time, she is heading south. And I don't know who she's going to encounter there. Maybe she'll be caught up by Robb on his trek to Dragonstone, which is where we are going to next.
Robb?
No, Robb. John.
Back from the dead.
It's been a long day.
It has been a long day. It's been a very long day. I haven't quite finished bitching about Ed Sheeran right now.
Go for it. I wanted to just move on.
I absolutely detest Ed Sheeran as a person, as a musician, as a human being. This guy is one of the worst things in humanity right now. He's everywhere, and it needs to fucking stop. He infected the Middle-earth saga by doing a fucking horrible, tonally inconsistent song with the Hobbit films with I See Fire, which is a dreadful song, and I will argue against anyone who says otherwise. And now he's in Game of Thrones. You were right. We've had people from Coldplay before in Game of Thrones who were at the Red Wedding.
We had Sigur
People
Rós.
probably don't recognise that.
Jugglers, and also playing the Red Wedding.
Yeah. And as you said, they were all tucked out of the way. They don't draw attention to them. They serve a purpose. The entire episode, the momentum of the episode stops dead in its tracks. And you can tell that this scene was completely written and orchestrated. It's a pointless scene. You can lift it out. Nothing changes in order to get Ed Sheeran and the kid from This Is England in there. It completely took me out of it. I was immersed in this series. And then it was like, boom, there's Ed Sheeran. What's he doing here? Couldn't stand it.
Unless Aya goes and like kills them all next episode.
Oh, I hope so.
It would be pointless. And it would have to be something triggered, like maybe them figuring out the identity. Maybe even it's them figuring out the identity and them still letting her go.
Yeah.
That would be worth the fact that this was in this episode. I just really hope that Arya's story moves on away from these characters, so that when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, I can fan edit that episode and literally just remove that scene, and the world will be a better place for it. But yeah, let's move to Dragonstone then. So the name of the episode itself, we all knew we were expecting some kind of big Daenerys scene, and finally, oh my god, finally, at 7 seasons in, she has landed at Westeros at Dragonstone. Fucking 7 hells and praises be on the mother and the warrior and all the 7 gods. Jesus Christ, it took long enough. This was a great scene. It closed the episode. I loved the establishing shot of Dragonstone. We get to see it in all its glory now. We have been to Dragonstone before in season 2, but we never got to see it to this scale. I think a budget probably played a lot into that. We get to see dragons. The music's fantastic, and we get this really sweeping geographical look at what Dragonstone is. And the importance of Dragonstone now to essentially the fate of the world, in that it's built on a mountain, or I think they say that a mountain of dragonglass is buried within the earth. Jon Snow at some point will be traveling down there, and that's where all the fanboys and fangirls are going to go crazy, writing their fan fiction that Jon Snow and Daenerys are going to meet. Oh, of course he will, because they're related. In the next episode preview, I believe, I can't remember who it is. Lord Manderley or someone like that says to Jon, you can't trust a Targaryen. So I'm assuming he's talking to, like, maybe Sam's letter got across in time for the next episode, which means the plot's gonna be moving on pretty quick this series.
Yeah.
To fill in time slots. I like this scene. I mean, I've never been. Yeah, it's difficult to describe, because I know that the people on the podcast don't like Daenerys.
I can't stand her.
I think she's okay. Always have, and I've always stated that she hasn't been the worst character in Game of Thrones, and she has had some phenomenal moments, some of the most iconic moments towards Game of Thrones. And maybe because she has such big iconic moments, you expect her to be amazing iconic the whole time, and she just can't be that. So I thought this was a serviceable scene. I can't wait to see her actually do stuff next episode, especially with Tyrion back in the fray. You've got both the
Greyjoys as well.
Yep. You've also got can't remember names. I need to go back through the series, man.
You've got Yara, you've got Theon, you've got
Missandei,
Missandei,
and Grey Worm.
Yeah,
we know that Missandei and Grey Worm are going to get it on at some point.
That's going to be interesting to see how that goes down.
You want to see how it goes down?
Kind of. I want to know how these things happen between a eunuch and whatever. Weird territory. Daenerys, I need to get on more hate. So I've had Ed Sheeran. So I technically can't hate as much because he is the worst thing in this episode. But Daenerys, thankfully, Emilia Clarke only has one line in this episode, which is a saving grace, because Emilia Clarke is a dreadful actress. She's always been one note. She's always been deadpan. She's shown no range whatsoever as the character of Daenerys. And you talk about these epic moments, yes, but they're orchestrated to be that way so that fans can go, oh my God, Daenerys, she's strong female lead and epic, and she has dragons and she's awesome and she marshals an army. Strip all that away, she is a nothing character. She really is. And I blame that on the writing, because this is a character that they keep saying, it's almost like Thorin Oakenshield from The Hobbit. They keep giving this portent that, you know, your father was mad, you know, you could go down the same path, you could be a tyrant. And we never really see that, because they keep broadsiding us with, oh my God, Daenerys is awesome, and finally she's at Westeros. If they take her character in a direction in this series where we see that madness come into her as a Targaryen, as a mad queen, as a tyrant, that is the interesting stuff I want to see from Daenerys, where she is completely blinded by it, but everyone else can see this change in her. I just don't know if Emilia Clarke's the kind of actress that can show that on screen, because you look at all the other characters. I mean, Peter Dinklage has always remained perfectly consistent. Some of the other actors didn't start great and have now got better as the series have gone on. Emilia Clarke has just flatlined from season 1, episode 1, in my opinion. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but thankfully she only had one line.
Where are my dragons?
Yeah, and it's the writing. They always give her like those really cringeworthy trailer lines. It's always the trailer lines. I can't stand her. I'm sorry. I know you like her. I know you're kind of.
She got dragons, and that's always going to trump speech, I guess. I mean, Tyrion is the words master, so hopefully he can bounce a bit off Daenerys a bit more, and everything else. But anyway, other than Daenerys touching a bit of sand, walking up a bunch of steps, and saying, "Shall we begin?" whilst looking at a table, nothing really happened at Dragonstone. That's going to be next episode, because next episode is called Stormborn, so of course it's going to be about Daenerys. Even though this episode was called Dragonstone, the least amount of things happened in Dragonstone. Anyway, let's move on to King's Landing. There isn't really many alive characters left in King's Landing who are worth talking about now, is there?
Due to reasons of massive explosion. 4.
We have Qyburn, the Mountain, Jaime, Cersei. Yeah. And we saw 3 of them this episode. 2 of them did a lot. 1 of them did one thing, and Qyburn was nowhere to be seen, which I find quite surprising. I thought they were going to play off a bit more like having the background character who you can't always quite trust kind of parallel. So you've got one in the north being Littlefinger, you've got one in the south being Qyburn, being kind of a budget Littlefinger in that case. We don't really know what Qyburn's true intentions are yet, but we know that he controls the Hound, and not the Hound, the Mountain, and he could turn on anyone with the Mountain. So interesting parallels going on over there. So Cersei has a map painted for her. She tells Jaime about all the threats to the north, south, east, west, and how she's surrounded, and how she is the queen, even though her father said, whoever declares I am the king is no king. So she obviously hasn't learned. A lot of speculation online. She stood at the neck. Jaime has stood at the fingers. Something to do with the Valancourt, maybe?
There was a Watch Mojo video that said the top 3 things. I can't remember all 3. I remember 2 of them. The top 3 things you may have missed in this new episode. One of them was Ed Sheeran cameoed in it. I don't think anyone missed that. But the other thing...
Who missed that?
Someone out there missed that. Someone out there did. But they mentioned about this whole positioning of Jaime and Cersei on the map, and mentioned the Valancourt, which is in the book, but they didn't bring it into the series. The place to do it was in the Maggie the Frog prophecy, and I believe I can't remember what they stripped it down to for the show, but it was essentially
They stripped it down to the kids. They only talked about the kids. The kids will die.
And a queen more fairer than her would reign after her, or something like that. They didn't do the whole little brother thing, and I talked about that last season and how I wish they'd have integrated that, because people think that it might be Jaime, it could be Tyrion, it could be Sandor Clegane, it could literally be any little brother in Game of Thrones. And that, again, that's why George R. R. Martin's so good. But they didn't integrate that, so audiences aren't aware of it unless you've read the books. And if they're going to start doing that now, it seems very weird with no setup.
Let's be honest, we got parallels to the Mad King with the Mad Queen. We have 2 possible Mad Queens that are going to take place. We know which one Jaime is more likely to kill, that being Cersei, being so close. I mean, that could be the thing that turns Jaime into the Lord of Light. I mean, he's got his own kind of pitch there. He hasn't been reborn in fire. However, we do see in this series that he does run through a flaming field, stabbing the heart of your loved one. And isn't it plunging the heart into the heart of a lion or something like that as well? So, Jaime, Lord of Light?
I don't know about that, but he's
one of the low down contenders. He's not one of the big contenders, but he's definitely one kind of that's worth mentioning at least, especially with what we've seen so far.
I definitely think this series is going to end with Cersei dying, definitely at the hands of Jaime. But what that also means, I think, is that Jaime will also bow out too. Throughout many of the series, Cersei and Jaime have always talked about the connection with each other and how close they are with each other. They came into this world together. They shared a womb together. You know, they sleep together. They've had children together.
And they're going to go out on that world together.
And they're going to die together. I definitely think that's going to happen, but I do think that Cersei will be killed at the hands of Jaime, which will also offer a nice parallel to when he killed the Mad King. He will see what Cersei's become, what she's gone through.
Cersei's already done way worse than the Mad King ever did. Like, the Mad King threatened to burn everything to the ground, and Cersei has burnt everything to the ground.
Exactly. One thing I will say that I was a little bit disappointed with King's Landing stuff, and maybe it will develop further, is that I wanted to see the state of the people at this stage. Cersei has just quite openly, and if people don't tie that terrorist attack to her, then everyone in King's Landing is done. It's complete religious upheaval. The Holy Sept has been razed to the ground. The entire Tyrell line has been extinguished, more or less, apart from Olenna. Yeah. What does this mean? And then Queen Cersei asserts herself. Was she a popular decision? What do people think? I wanted to see more of the actual political situation in King's Landing. The image of Cersei walking across the map is fine. However, I do think it's a bit of an on-the-nose metaphor. You know, like, let's paint a map in a courtyard just so we can have that shot of Cersei essentially walking astride the world. I do love Lena Headey, though. I've said this before. She's the ultimate woman. I love Cersei to death. She's probably my second favorite character behind Littlefinger. But I also love Jaime too. And I like that this series is going to show that, just that complete destruction of that relationship. Jaime, more or less now, inherently is a good character. He's had that redemption arc. Cersei's gone completely insane, and that's going to draw the two apart. Whether Jaime's going to want to try and side with another house, whether he's going to try and go about it on his own, and will he actually see that journey, if he does kill his sister at the end, go from a woman that he loves to a woman that he will murder. Will be incredibly interesting to see how it evolves throughout the episode. I'm saying the words interesting a lot. I need to find a thesaurus of a different word for interesting, but yes, it's intriguing. There we go.
One of the funniest parts of the episode, we see Cersei needs allies, and the only evil people left other than the White Walkers to side with are Euron Greyjoy and the Greyjoy, the Iron Fleet. So he says that he'll give her a priceless gift for a hand in marriage, which I'm assuming is probably going to be Tyrion's head.
I thought it just might be Tyrion. He might just bring him back alive.
One or the other. I mean, we didn't really see much of Tyrion in the trailers, so I really do hope they don't kill him off.
They won't kill him off. Fans would fucking riot if they killed Tyrion.
There would be a lot of bloodshed in real life.
Yeah, oh yeah. Were you shocked to see Euron rock up to King's Landing, because he was
No,
pretty much
not
dead
even
set on
slightly.
going
No,
straight to Daenerys, wasn't it, at the end of
no.
the last series?
I mean, they are. Let's be honest here. They are the only evil people left, other than the White Walkers. Of course, they were going to team up at some point. Euron needs allies now that half his fleet has gone. Cersei needs allies now that she has enemies in every direction. She needs some form of safety net, and she can't trust him. She cannot trust Euron, but she knows that if he wants to be on her side, she can kind of manipulate him.
Mm-hmm.
Especially seen as without her saying yes, I'll have my hand in marriage and stuff like that. She's already getting him to do stuff for him, which will please her, and that is the only power that Cersei really wants.
And we're already seeing that change in Cersei as well, where Euron makes comment that I killed my brother, you should try it sometime. And
here I am with a fleet and 2 good hands.
Oh, best line.
Jamie's face is like, fucking what, mate?
He did like the comedic turn to the camera, like, what? Yeah, no, I like that, but I liked how Cersei, usually she'd be like, get out, like, you don't talk to my brother like that. But in this, she was like,
yeah,
maybe I will kill him at some point. Who knows?
And I think this is another thing of her distancing Jamie, which we're going to see a lot more in this series. Mm-hmm. We've already seen it kind of in previous series, but I think the distancing is going to happen at a larger rate.
Yeah, I like how Lena Headey played that scene as well. Headey. I always say Headey. I've heard 2 pronunciations. When Jamie mentions about Tommen, and you can tell that it still has had an effect on her, because she goes straight for the wine, starts pouring a big glass of it.
Yeah.
She shut it out at this point, and I'm wondering if you look at the death.
He betrayed us.
I'm gonna have to watch the episode again. I've only seen it once.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the line was, "What about Tommen?" And she goes, "He betrayed us," and stuff like that. So I don't think Jamie knows quite what happened. Like, he's obviously cluing on to some things, and I think he knows that he committed suicide. However, to everyone else in the city, he died in the explosion. So what has Cersei said about that then? That he committed suicide, or that he died in the explosion?
And I hope we find out. These are the kind of things I want to know. These are the questions I want answered. But I like how, as every single one of her children has died, sorry, her emotional reaction to it has been considerably lessened. First one with Joffrey, she was rage-filled, she was crying, she was angry. This was her firstborn dead. Myrcella, she didn't go to the funeral. Tommen prevented her from going to it. She was cut up about it because she loved Myrcella. She said she was good. Tommen dies. Nothing. And it's got steadily worse and worse. Maybe because she's given into the prophecy, or maybe it's because she's got power on her mind now and nothing else. But yeah, no, I love Cersei, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops as the series goes on. Really, our last location.
Let's go to Old Town. Possibly some of the more interesting stuff, be it that this was kind of already new. If you knew about kind of Game of Thrones, you'd immediately go, where are you likely to find Dragonglass? I don't know, maybe the island called Dragonstone. That might help. Like, it's one of those you put 2 together and you're just like, yeah, that works, and you're kind of expecting it. But,
and the fact that Sam is meant to be all wise, even before going to Old Town to train to be a maester, and he goes, John told me about this island that had dragonglass, but I didn't believe him. And now when the
Dragonstone,
yeah, and now when I question it and the whole world is at stake, there is dragonglass on Dragonstone. I was like, oh my god, okay,
a lot of it.
As a learned reader, he did loads of reading at the wall. Surely there must have been some descriptions or histories or tomes that talked about this island. It is what it is.
Why is that stuff in the restricted section?
That reminds me of Harry Potter so much. The Forbidden Library. You even
get a shot of Sam, who's been deprived of a few books, who has been given access to all the other books, just kind of looking at the cage like a little puppy. Just.
I did like that montage, though. I thought he played that
fantastically. The most disgusting montage in the entire series. We've seen blood spilt. We've seen people have their eyes popped out of their heads. But that was by far the most disgusting thing seen on Game of Thrones. I called it the poop and soup montage. because at the end of it, you don't know what's poop and what's soup, and it
Mhm.
just is horrible.
The best meme I've seen for this current episode of Game of Thrones is you think you're having a bad day, and then it's a picture of Samwell Tarly with the poop and suit montage. It was funny, it was humorous, it was a nice change up with the editing and everything like that. I did like that. And you can see Sam's frustration, like he wants to save the world, but he's got to start at essentially level 1. And there was a new cast member in this. I don't believe he's been in season 5 or season 6. Jim Broadbent. I love Jim Broadbent. He's one of the most wholesome actors. He's an absolute national treasure. And I guess we can say that this episode had both Argus Filch and Professor Slughorn in it.
Yes, it did.
Not reunited together, don't get me wrong, but you know, in the same episode. I love Broadbent, and I like that they've set it up where he's the only person that believes Sam, and he'll help him. He's got to be ready for it, though. It's like the whole, you know, Yoda training Luke, the whole Shifu training Poe, whatever kung fu martial art allegory you want to go with. It's going to be exactly the same with Sam in this, and he will learn about it when he's ready. He's already sent the Raven to John, which you've said, as you've seen the preview for next week.
I want to make a quick thing. So obviously news in the north and south travels somewhat. When did Sam find out that John was alive again? At what stage would he have had the time to receive a Raven to find out that John was alive again, especially seeing as he went down to his home place first and then travelled onwards to Old Town? We never saw him receive a Raven. How the hell is he meant to know that someone who was the Night's Watch commander, and all it would have said was there is a new commander in the shape of Dolores Ed? That's the only message that they could have received. There wouldn't be one saying, oh, this dude's come back from the dead, because no one would believe it.
I'm going to have to watch them all again to see if there was a scene that mentioned that, but I don't remember a scene, because you think that would be a huge emotional relief scene for Sam, in that they're best
and yet
friends.
He's just straight away, oh, I'll send it to John, as if he's almost like within communications with him.
Maybe he didn't know that he died and came back to life. Maybe he still thinks that he's there and it's fine and everything's hunky-dory, nothing's changed at the wall, and he's sending the Raven to...
At the end of last series, they said, who is your commander at the Night's Watch? And he goes, Lord Jon Snow. And he says, actually, at this present moment in time, we have written down someone else.
Plot hole.
I found one.
It's going to be fun when this gets to season 8 to see all of the plot holes that may have emerged within the series. There's probably loads already. Where is Gendry? Is he in this series?
If he's hidden somewhere in Dragonstone,
he might be. He might be. You never know. Is there any? Oh, we have
the
one.
Final thing.
Yes,
we have Jorah the Explorer, whose arm is now rock. He is turning into the Thing, and it is beautiful. Mm-hmm. I want to see him go full on rock monster and like just destroy people because no one wants to go near him, and his skin is impenetrable. That'd be phenomenal. But anyway, he's in Old Town. He's getting cured. Funnily enough,
we think, or he's just quarantined, maybe.
In the books that Sam was reading, someone pointed out on Reddit that if you look closely, it says stuff about curing with dragonglass. So maybe he is going to be tagging along with old Sam.
Is dragonglass just like is dragonglass just now the Deus Ex Machina of everything? Like it can cure all wounds. It can kill White Walkers. It's probably, you know, it can attack a dragon. Who knows? I don't know.
I'm not gonna lie. Dragonglass diet, I'd be down for that. Like, eat a stick of dragonglass every day. And you'll feel fine.
Does it say like contains so much omega-3 and, you know, all that stuff, vitamins?
So much omega-3, it's actually omega-30.
It was cool seeing Jorah again. I didn't expect to see this. I didn't expect Jorah to be at this location. It was kind of an impossible task that Daenerys gave him at the last episode. She was just sort of like, I command you to find a cure. He has no scientific knowledge. That would be like someone
through Game of Thrones. Good job.
Yeah. That would be like someone going to me like, oh yeah, Chris, go and find the cure for cancer. Where do I start? Where do I fucking start?
You said it, I think you would do it.
I love Jorah. is one of my favorite characters. I'm looking forward to seeing how, because we don't know if he's being cured. I know you've said you've looked at that picture of the book, so clearly that's where it's been set up to be. At this stage, I thought maybe he's just being quarantined. Maybe they don't know how to cure him, and they've just got him locked up there. It looks like his arm has definitely been eaten up a lot more since we last saw him. He's going to become either the Thing, as you said, or the Rockbiter from Neverending Story. But
also, another thing, I know that Sam's tired and all reading, but he's reading one page and then he literally flicks past 2 pages and immediately lands on the Dragonstone page.
Well, at least he had to flick through some pages. Like, he couldn't just open it and it would fall at the correct page.
No, what he did was he was reading and then he had it on one page and he flicked over exactly 2 pages and Dragonstone appeared up. He flicked one too many pages. He missed a page. That could have been literally, it could have been just a message saying, lol, you don't just need Dragonstone, Valerian Steel works as well, or something like that. Like, he could have had the answer, but he skipped over it.
It's just plot, isn't it? It's just,
That's why, kids, you don't read when it's late at night, because you get very tired.
And you begin to read the same sentence over and over again, and you begin to read the same sentence over and over again.
Yeah. Over and over again. Over and over again.
Oh God, we've entered the Twilight Zone. No.
Okay, anyway, guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that jazz. Follow us on Instagram. Just type in Cinema Savvy, you'll probably find us. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. That's Cinema Savvy as well. We're still on Letterboxd. I don't do Letterboxd.
All the links are in the description, guys.
They're all below, so just click on random things and see where you end up. You might find yourself having fun. We'll be back next week for another episode of Game of Thrones. That episode is called Stormborn, I believe. Episode 2 of 7 of Season 7. And this week we will have... Is there going to be a Rockathon this week, Chris? Do you know? Or
Rockathon will be next week. We've got a news episode on Thursday. We did our D23 one. This is just going to be the week in all of the movie news that wasn't D23 related. Tomorrow I'm going to do my very best to get some reactions out. I need to do one for A Wrinkle in Time and the latest Blade Runner trailer, which I still haven't seen because I'm waiting to do my reaction on it.
And we have a surprise Photon film.
Yes.
Which is going to be happening this Friday as well. So be sure to be tuned in for that.
And Dunkirk review on Sunday, I believe we're shooting to get a review out for that.
Yes,
a lot of stuff happening on that channel. As we said, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff. Yeah, and keep watching Game of Thrones, folks.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Ladies.